ladies and gents. Welcome to another Spikes and Hill Football for Beginners tutorial. I'm Gwen.
I'm Sabrina.
We're just so delighted to have you. So today we'll be discussing defense. All the defensive position. I'm a defense girl. I love straight defense for me. I could take a quarterback or two, but I'm defense. I like middle linebackers, safeties. These dudes need to learn how to tackle, hold, or hit.
Yes. This is the exciting side of the ball for us, for sure.
Yes.
So last week we talked about offense and broke down all the offensive players and their positions. So if you missed that, go back and watch that episode. But today is all about the defense. All right, folks. So we're going to start out with defensive tackles. Now we're showing you on the screen a little diagram that Gwen so smartly came up with to show you kind of in general just a basic formation of where the offense and the defense could line up. And you see the defensive tackles are in the middle of this diagram. And the job of a defensive tackle is to push through. So first of all, let me go back. The defensive tackle is on that line. You know how you see the guys line up in a straight line on the field and they push up against each other? The defensive tackle is in that line of people. And his job is to push through and try to get to the quarterback or the running back or the fullback in the background to bust up the play and break them up. So his job is to defend and push through. And we're going to talk about
on the scheme of the defense. There may be two or there may be just one.
Good point.
Because some defense are 4, is it called 4-5 or 3-4, right?
4-3 or 3-4.
Yeah, something like that. But depending on the scheme of the defense, there may be 2 defensive tackles or just 1 on the line.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for that. That's an important point. And now we're going to talk about some famous defensive tackles that you may or may not have heard of. The first is going to be Mr. Sean Gilbert. He is kind of a slightly controversial player. He played with several teams, including the Washington football team who we cheer for. And I remember him because I remember one year he said, I believe this is him, he said God told him to hold out for more money. And everybody laughed at him and made so much fun of him. But he got exactly what he was holding out for. So I remember him for that for some reason. But he was a notable defensive tackle.
Okay, next you have one of my favorites, Ron Sapp. He played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers primarily, and he played with the Raiders. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2013. This dude was big.
And his mouth was...
You want your defensive tackles, but this dude was bigger than you normally would see them. And he had a mouth of this stuff. He actually was an analyst after he retired, but he had made so many controversial statements that most sports networks stopped using him in 2015.
Yeah. And I think he had some off the field stuff a little bit too. But anyway,
he was animated.
He's an enjoyable guy and a great player.
Yeah,
Great
smile. Yeah.
Right. And next up, we have Mr. Randy White, who played for our nemesis, the Cowboys. He actually went to the University of Maryland back in the day, and he ended up in Dallas and played with them, I believe, his whole career or most of it. Very notable player. So Mr. Randy White, we had to mention you. Next up, we have Mr. John Randall, very notable player. I can still see his face. I'm showing it to you now. He played with the Vikings for many, many years, if not his whole career. I needed to look that up. But he played with the Vikings as far as what I knew him as. And he was inducted into the Hall of Fame about 10 years ago, in 2010 or so. So John Randall, we had to mention you.
And lastly, we have one of the most popular defensive tackles of all time. He made a commercial that won the hearts and minds of everybody. His commercial started the Super Bowl commercial trend, if you ask me. And that is Mr. Amin Joe Green of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was part of that steel curtain.
Yes.
Like, he was no getting past them. And he was phenomenal. I could see it clearly when I started watching football. I was a Pittsburgh fan because the Redskins was losing and I wanted somebody to beat Dallas. So I was always rooting for Franco Harris and Amin Joe Green in them. But Amin Joe Green, he's a legend.
Yes, he is. And you cannot mention tackles without mentioning him. Yeah.
That's right.
So those are your tackles. And of course, there were many more, but those are the ones that we chose for today. Look up your own tackles. Let me know who you think we should have mentioned. All right, next up, we're going to do the teammates that are on the line with the tackles, which are the defensive ends. And as it sounds, they are on the ends of the line on defense. And their job is the same, to push through, to rush the passer, to try to break up the play before it develops. So we are going to now tell you some defensive ends that you may have heard of.
First up, we have the this dude was a ex-football player, turned morning show host, turned NFL analyst. Now he's a game show host. I mean, this guy can do it all. And I'm talking about my brother from another mother, truly, and my twin, Michael Strahan. He made Having a Gap popular because I hated my gap. But once I saw him on TV, I thought I can maybe rock with this and be the female Strahan of the NFL analyst, right?
Oh gosh,
big shoes to fill, right?
But you can do this. You can do this.
He was with the New York Giants. He's a Super Bowl champion. He was very dominant in his role, Mr. Michael Strahan.
Yes, and I'm sure probably of all the people that we're going to name, you probably know him
the best.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we are going to mention somebody that I have a soft spot for, and I don't know why. I really like this guy. Straight in your face. I really like this guy, Howie Long. I think Howie is a cool dude. Like, he just seems like a likable person. He played his whole career, 13 years with the Raiders, either in Oakland or I think Los Angeles, wherever the two places that they played. And he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2000. He has been a long-time analyst on Fox. And I just like Howie.
I like Howie too.
A nice guy. Howie Long, we could
not play professional football.
Yes. Who I know is he has two sons.
One plays for the Steelers, and I want to say the other one is with the 49ers or the Seahawks.
Okay. So yeah, football runs all through that family. Yeah. So yay, Howie.
Up next is one of my favorite of all time, Mr. Dexter Manley, number 72 with Washington Redskins team.
Yes.
Dexter was a beast on the end. You had Dexter Manley on one end and Charles Mann on the other, and the two were a package. I mean, they devoured the quarterbacks.
Yeah,
he's a two-time Super Bowl champion. He had a long career with the Washington team. He ended up playing a little stunt with the Tampa Bays and the Cardinals after he left the Redskins. A lot of people don't know that. But because of his off-the-field antics and substance abuse problems, Dexter Manley probably would never be inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's been nominated every year since 1996, and he hasn't gotten in yet.
Which to me is so sad. He did his part.
To be there.
He deserves to be in.
When you're a player, there's certain expectations. A lot of their contracts have conduct policies in them. Like if you don't do or you do such you lose this amount of money, or your contract is waived or non and void. So be very careful. It is imperative that they conduct themselves on and off the field with the proper conduct.
That's right.
But it's going to be very unfortunate for him because I don't think they'll ever let him in. He's the Pete Rose of the NFL.
Yeah, good point. And Dexter, though, you know, we love you. We
love you bunches. Yeah. I actually met him twice.
When?
Yes, at school. They came to my middle school, and one day we were standing outside. You know how you stand outside arcade when they're going on East Capitol Street, and he was signing out stuff.
Aww.
That's the Manley, number 72.
All right. Next up, we have Mr. Reggie White, who is actually one of the most awarded players in NFL history. Very talented gentleman. His nickname was the Minister of Defense because, you know, he was a Christian pastor off the field. And so that was his nickname. He spent most of his career, the bulk of it, with the Packers or the Eagles. So he started with the Eagles, then went to the Packers. And he has one Super Bowl ring with the Packers. And actually, I think he had this huge play. I remember something about him having this huge play to win the Super Bowl for the Packers. I got to go back and let's all look that up. But anyway, he had 15 seasons in the league, and he actually passed away in 2004, suddenly, unexpectedly, from a cardiac arrhythmia. And then they said something about sleep apnea could have played a part too, but everybody was so shocked and so saddened when he passed away. So we couldn't do this particular list without mentioning Reggie White.
Bruce Smith was a complete wrecking ball.
Mm-hmm.
He dominated that front line. He started his career out with the Buffalo Bills, but then transferred to the Washington team in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
He was inducted into the College Hall of Fame in 2006, and he got into the NFL Hall of Fame on the first year that he was eligible, which was 2009. Right. He had over 200 career sacks. This dude was phenomenal.
Wow. And so that is your list of defensive ends. And we're going to now go to my favorite position on the field, linebacker. Linebackers.
Middle linebacker. These dudes hit hard. Mm-hmm. Their only job is to hit.
Yes. And if you think about what the name sounds like, they are in the back of the line. So you see the long line of players. And then the linebackers are the next line of defense behind them. So you can see it on the diagram that I'm showing you now. The linebackers are right there behind the line. And I'm so excited. Gwen to put together this list of linebackers. There are so many that we could have named.
So you couldn't even just narrow down to 5. So you had to pick the 5 that meant something to you or that you could remember first seeing or had the hardest hit on earth. These are the ones you can't, it's too many.
Too many. First up, we're going to mention one of our Washington football team players, Mr. Sam Huff. He is now 86 years strong, going strong. And for many years, he did color commentating for the team, for the radio team for Washington. But before that, he played with the Giants and with Washington. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1982. So it's been a while, right? It's been a while. But Mr. Sam Huff, we had to mention you.
And keeping up with my Maryland love, my love for Maryland, got to bring my boy in there. That's Ray Lewis. Ray spent his entire career with the Ravens. Fun fact about Ray, I remember this. The Ravens team started in 1996, and Ray was their first round draft pick. Mm-hmm. When he retired in 2012, he was the only remaining player from the original team. Mm-hmm. Ray was a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He won an MVP. He was notorious for stopping the run.
Yeah.
Like you came his way, you weren't getting past him.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Lewis, he's a football Hall of Fame.
And he was inducted on his first year of eligibility. Yes, he was.
That says something about him. I used to love watching Ray.
Yeah, I loved his dancing. I know a lot of people either liked it or they hated it, but I loved his dancing. I loved everything that he did. So go ahead, sweet baby Ray.
One of my newer favorites, he's retired now, was Luke Kuechly. Did I pronounce his name? I have a hard time pronouncing his name.
I think it's Kuechly.
Kuechly, but we call him Luke K.
Mm-hmm.
He spent the whole 8 years with the Panthers. He was a great linebacker. He made a name for himself in just that short time frame. Like when you played Carolina, you knew Luke was coming at you. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, his career was ended really soon because he took a horrible hit, and he decided to retire in 2020. He's now an NFL scout. He scouts for a team. They never really tell you what team they scout for, but he's an NFL scout now.
Oh, okay. And next up, we have Mr. Brian Urlacher. I can see his dome right in my head. He played his whole career with the Chicago Bears. He was a force to be reckoned with. Anytime you faced him, you had to be ready. He was not playing. He wasn't intimidated. I really liked Brian Urlacher. He played his final game in 2012, and then he announced his retirement in May of 2013. And then he was also inducted into the Hall of Fame for the NFL on his first time of eligibility in 2018. So he is a Hall of Famer, Mr. Brian Urlacher.
And speaking of Urlacher, you can't speak of Urlacher without speaking of Mr. Dick Butkus.
Yes, played for the Chicago Bears. Both of them did.
His entire career.
Yeah, not at the same time, of course.
Of course, because he was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 1979. Yeah. He became an actor and an analyst. Mm-hmm. And I want to say he did a lot of commercials. I remember seeing his face in a lot of commercials.
Yeah, he did acting. And, he's widely regarded as one of the most notable and intimidating and known linebackers in NFL history still today. Yeah. Even younger players today have heard of Mr. Dick Butkus, so we had to mention him.
So now we come to Sabrina's most hated position on the field. We did in one of our episodes, we talked about what position would you never want to play.
Ever.
And Sabrina said she never would play cornerbacks. And tell them why, Sabrina.
Because the cornerback's job, and we're going to show you the diagram again, is to cover the wide receiver. What does that mean? Every time the wide receiver makes a move, wherever they run on the field, the corner has to cover them and go where they go to try to keep them from catching the ball. So that's the cornerback's job. But it's often difficult to do that because if you hold their jersey or their arm or whatever for a little bit too long or too far down the field or whatever, you're going to get called a penalty on. And so it's very hard to be a good cornerback because you're going to end up interfering with the wide receiver, which you cannot do. You have to defend by your body positioning and your hands and things of that nature. So I would never play a corner. I respect them highly because to me, they have a very hard job.
And a corner is a highly penalized position.
Yes, probably the line. I would say the line
and then the corner.
Yeah.
They get penalized a lot.
Yeah.
So let's start it off with two of my favorites, and then they're both former players. Mm-hmm. Ty Law. Mm-hmm. I remember him because he was just beast mode at it. He played with the Patriots, won a couple of Super Bowls with them. I do remember him in the Super Bowls. He was all over the place, and he was a phenom. And next we had Aqib Talib. Mm-hmm. He was on so many teams, but to name a few, the Dolphins, the Broncos, the Patriots, the Rams. I think I'm missing one more. Mm-hmm. But he's a Super Bowl champion. He retired last year in 2019. Mm-hmm. He was the beast mode. You ain't catching nothing on this dude. Whatever team he was on, he performed well on all the teams that he was on. Mm-hmm. You forever hear the commentators calling his name for great play, great play. Mm-hmm. He was a specialty at it because he would find a way to stop the dude without getting penalized. Mm-hmm. So that would make him even better at his job. I really like Aqib.
Yes. All right, and next up, we're going to go to who I call the mouth of the South, even though he's not from the South. But Mr. Richard Sherman, he's going to let you know how he feels. He's going to tell you what he thinks. But on top of that, he does back it up. He's a very good cornerback. He started out with the Seahawks, and he won his only Super Bowl ring with the Seahawks that gave them their very first Super Bowl ever for the franchise. And now he's with the 49ers. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. Very highly respected, still very good at what he does. He's a current player. He's still playing. And he will probably, yes, with the 49ers. We just saw him a couple weeks ago when we played them for Washington. And Mr. Richard Sherman, very educated, smart man, and very good player.
Yes. And these last two corners are on the NFL's top 10 of all time. Mm-hmm. It's Mr. Daryl Green of the Washington Redskins, formerly the Washington Redskins. He's been his entire career with us. Yes. Daryl was Speedy Gonzalez.
I have so many memories of Daryl Green. Him stopping, it was either the Vikings or the Bears.
Irv Dickerson.
For us to make the playoffs.
No, that's the Vikings you talk about. But the most memorable player all time, Irv Dickerson had like a 30-yard lead. He was running down.
But he ran him down.
And Daryl Green ran him down and stopped him from scoring.
Yes, I do remember that. I remember his play to stop the other team when we made the Super Bowl. I remember he hurt his ribs one time.
He hurt it over a guy and hurt it over so bad he twisted his rib. But he caught an interception and ran it back for a touchdown.
Yes, so many great memories of Daryl. Yes. Absolutely beloved here in Washington.
I got two of his jerseys and a T-shirt with his number on.
Yeah, he's gonna always be an all-time Washington favorite.
All right, and he's definitely in the Hall of Fame. I don't even have to check.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, Gwen mentioned Deion Sanders, Mr. Trash Talker. He's going to tell you how he feels as well. And Deion is highly regarded as probably
the
best cornerback of all time. He used to, I don't know if he still does it anymore, but on the NFL Network, he did this segment called 21st and Prime because his nickname was Prime Time. And so when players had a good game, he would interview them after the game and said, all right, you on 21st and Prime. He's very highly regarded as the best. Even though I
had the fastest time in the combine ever. I think two people have since tied him, and one has maybe gone 1 second below, but he was super fast.
He was.
He was on a couple of teams. He was a Washington Redskin for him. Most of his fame came from when he was a Dallas Cowboy
and the Falcons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Deion is still going strong today. He was just recently hired as the coach of, I believe, JSU football, one of the colleges.
Wow.
He was hired as their coach. So Deion is moving up. You might see him on the NFL sideline one day. You never know.
Those are your 5 of the corners that we felt should be recognized.
And I wanted to give an honorable mention to Champ Bailey. He is in the Hall of Fame. He played with Washington for the first part of his career. And then I was so sad when he went to the Denver Broncos, and that's where he really even more blossomed and got his Super Bowl ring. So
they said his wife told him to leave.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I remember.
Dang.
I was hurt. I was like, all football players dump their wives. No girls. No. Not having it, huh? No. I'm just joking. But yes, his wife had an issue with his contract and she wanted him out. So he followed her out.
Well, they say happy wife, happy life. I hate that phrase, but that's what they say. And he went there and succeeded. So
exactly. So it's a win-win for him. And now, ladies and gents, we've come to the last position on defense. And this is the safety position.
The safety position. And I'm going to try to quickly explain. There are 2 kinds of safeties. There is a strong safety and a free safety. The strong safety, you'll usually see them closer to that long line of defensive players. So the strong safeties play closer to
the linebackers.
The linebackers to the line. They're usually stronger. They're usually bigger. And they usually focus more on the running plays than the free safeties do. The free safeties are also back there, but they focus more on the passing plays. They're like the last line of defense, basically. So free safeties are like the last line of defense. So if the offensive player is going and they get past that free safety, it's usually a little dicey after that. So that's sort of the difference between the 2 kinds of safeties.
And I also think the free safety, they use to double team. Like you'll have some wide receivers or some tight ends. I remember tight ends are heavier than normal wide receivers. Yeah. So it's going to take a middle linebacker or a free safety sometime to bring them down.
Good point.
Because they're thicker. Yeah, so I love that free safety position because you'll see them if they line up on the field, you'll see them converging on wherever the ball is thrown. Mm-hmm. It'll be 2 people on that one player is usually the free safety and the
coming to help.
Yeah, they coverage.
Yes,
they free to roam the field.
Yeah, they have more.
Another a duty of the strong safety is sometimes to blitz. Explain that later. But if there's a blitz happening, you'll see that strong safety up there with them linebackers ready to pop the quarterback.
Yeah. The first safety we're going to mention is Mr. Cam Chancellor. He was a strong safety who played his entire career with the Seattle Seahawks. And he is a 4-time Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl winner. And he retired pretty recently in 2018. He had some sort of a neck injury, and then I guess he figured I better play it safe and retire. So, but very notable Seahawk as a member of the Legion of Boom in Seattle, Mr. Cam Chancellor.
Okay, next you have Troy Polamalu. He was, I don't know what he was more famous for, the hair or the hitting. He was a strong safety with the Steelers. He played his entire career with the Steelers, Super Bowl champion. He was very popular, easy on the eyes, great hands. He was known for his hitting. When I tell you this dude could pop you,
yes,
he'd have knocked some players out before.
Listen, I don't know if today, if he would be as successful because they would flag him too much.
Yes.
And not to say that it was even a bad hit, but they would just assume it was because
the impact was so vicious.
Yes. Yeah.
One of my faves.
Yes. All right. And next up, we're going to talk about Mr. John Lynch, who spent his career with 3 teams, most notably the Broncos and the Buccaneers. Yes. He is a Super Bowl champion, and he's actually now an NFL executive with the
49ers.
49ers, yep, since 2017. So he graduated from player to executive very quickly, which it usually doesn't happen that quickly. So maybe he knew somebody. I don't know.
He was good at what he did. Can I tell you, because the 49ers kind of went up when he got on that team. He's the GM, I think.
Yeah, exactly. He
of
is.
the 49ers. So he makes all the executive decisions and then report up to the owner. He relays the owner's mindset and choices to the coach. And he kind of like the middleman. We explained about GMs before, in between the coach and the owner.
Next up, we have a former player, a way former player, Mr. Ronnie Lott. He was a very versatile player. He played strong safety. He played free safety, and he also played cornerback. Very versatile. He has 4 Super Bowl rings.
Which is kind of an anomaly with a defensive player from 2 different teams. That lets you know how good this dude was.
Yeah, and he
is known to be the best of all time at the safety position.
Yeah, Ronnie Lott, and I know him from the 49ers. I don't know if he ever played with anybody else. My mom sees him in that gold and red.
Quite a few teams, but yeah. Family, we have to speak on Sean Taylor. He came to the Washington team from the University of Miami. He was only here for 3 years, with us for 3 years, but he made such a strong impact in those 3 years.
Yes, he did.
He was known for hitting. We were going to rebuild with him because we were going to start the defense out. We need a corner, so we're going to start the defense out with the corner defensive position. And one day after the game, he went home for the weekend in 2007.
To Florida, right?
Yeah, to Florida. Somebody broke into his house and shot him. They hit a main artery. He bled out and he passed away.
And this was during the season, like right in the middle of a season.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember that so vividly.
Yeah, Sabrina and I both went to the game after his funeral, and they lost, and you could just feel that the stands, from the stands to the coaches to the players, nobody was in that game. Yeah,
and it was rainy that day, and anyway.
Yeah, very sad.
But we couldn't mention safeties without mentioning Sean Taylor. He really could have been probably the best safety of all time.
That's what a few analysts said. If he hadn't been murdered, he would have been. And I'm just wondering what's taking them so long to get him into the Hall of Fame. But you and I both read that it's very hard for a person that has played under 5 years to get in. So I just hope they do it soon. So there you have it. Every position on defense. So now you're set. We did offensive last week, and now we did all the defensive positions this week. So now on the screen, you should see a full posting of all the positions on the field.
Yes, and now you should probably maybe understand them a little bit better. You see all the players we've talked about, all the positions rather, that we've talked about. They're all there.
So ladies and gents, there you have it. You know everybody that's on the field of play in a football game.
And so we've done offense, we've done defense, and next week we are going to talk about something that we have not discussed yet, and that is special teams. And what else are we going to talk about next week?
We got to start teaching you guys about the playoffs, how it's set up, who goes, who doesn't, who plays, who doesn't.
That's going to be very exciting. So tune in next Wednesday, everybody. I'm Sabrina.
And I'm Gwen.
And we'll see you next time.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Love someone.